Hey everyone, you're listening to episode 77 of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. Thanks so much for inviting us to your table. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. We're a group of diverse friends who offer our takes on the latest and greatest board games to hit our table. I'm your host today, Daniela, the Goofy Noob, and I'm joined today by the Collector.
Hey, this is David.
And the Intellectual Introvert.
Hi everyone, this is Chris.
And the Deluxeifier.
Hello, it's Pete.
All right, today we are busy as bees, flying from table to table, combing the boards for honey and that sweet, sweet nectar. What the heck am I droning on about? Bees. We'll start in Sweetwater Grove, fanning, foraging, and fonding on our apian economy, pleasantly pollinating the pasture and honey buzz. Then it's off to outer space, flying our factions while farming for fiber, dreaming of dances while we hibernate in apiary. And finally, because we just can't help ourselves, we'll determine which game's nectar is sweeter, facing them off in our ultimate showdown, the Battle of the Funnest. But before we find out what all the buzz is about, David, what's our topic of discussion for today?
Okay, so this one's interesting. What do you guys think about giving used games as gifts? Are you for it, against it? Have you ever done it? What do you think about giving a used game as a gift to somebody else?
Well, I'll start. As far as wrapping it up and giving it under the Christmas tree as a used gift, I mean, unless if it was out of print, the only way to get it, that would be one way. Now, I know I have just handed, gifts to Daniela. I think I handed you one or two games that I had extra and, I gifted it away. I'm fine with doing that. So that's kind of my take on it. It's kind of dependent upon that game, but just to go to the store and buy it. I mean, unless you're buying it for a friend. I mean, I buy stuff for Dave all the time. He may or may not like it.
Yeah, or I would say the reverse of that is, how do you feel if somebody gives you a used game as a gift?
If it's hard to find, if it's limited print, if it's something like, I know we've gotten people stuff off of eBay and stuff before, or we've had to find games, or we found something randomly at a local store like Mark's that's, boxes junk, or we don't know if all the pieces are there, or, it's something at half price books and I know someone wants it. Like if I found Shadows over Camelot and I knew somebody wanted that, or if I found Nemesis and I knew somebody wanted that, like I would have no problem finding that at a great discount deal and gifting it to Chris.
I was super happy to get my copy of Straw. I mean, that's out of print. Yeah. So not an issue. Chris, you got something to say about this?
Yeah, I think I'll start by saying if somebody's giving me a gift, I want to be appreciative regardless. And I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. That being said, I think if someone, they went out and they bought a used copy and gave it to me, that's why I think that's different than, someone's just, okay, I had this game, I never play it anymore, I'll just give it to you. I think that's different. So if you're giving me your fluff, that I might be like, okay, well,
I don't want it either.
Right. But I don't know, if someone wants to give me a gift, I think I'm just going to be appreciative and try to be a decent person and say thank you.
Well, like, let's say there's a game that you don't like that's in your collection currently that somebody else will like, but it's open and it's used. Would you still give it to that person as a gift, or would you get them something else in addition to that?
I would give them something in addition to that. And if it's like, we're exchanging Christmas gifts and I want to grab something off my shelf I never play anymore, I might frown on that a little bit. I wouldn't want to do that to someone. But again, if I got to consider someone's situation too. Maybe that's what they can do. But if I'm doing that for someone, I'm probably buying them something else as well.
Any other hot takes on this?
Yeah, I just feel like it's maybe somebody likes the game and they want it. So
Danielle, here's a piece of crap game I never play anymore.
Well, that's another thing. If someone's giving me a piece of crap game like that I won't play, that's a little harder pill to swallow. But I don't feel like anybody would do. Like I don't feel like people would do that. So maybe that's just like me being naive about it.
I think if you're given a gift, you should know who you're giving it to. Like I said, I think I gave you what was it, Avalon, because I picked it up. I already had a copy of it. It was still in shrink wrap. I know you enjoyed that hidden trader role type thing, and I thought you'd enjoy it. So, I did that. And for Dave, my buddy, I bought it. I'm trying to think of the game now that I bought. But anyways, I ended up getting like the deluxe version of it, and I had the old game. He enjoyed the game very much, so I gave him my older copy. So, there's no strings attached. He just, here you go.
Maybe it depends on the thing that thing you have that where you buy a game for $50 and every time you play it, How many times have you played it to see what the current like dollar value
cost
is
per
of
play.
it? Yeah,
Yeah.
cost per play. So like maybe you bought something for $50. You played it once. All right, it's still worth $45. So maybe that's a better take on it.
To be clear, when David wraps up his copy of Eclipse and gives it to me, I'm going to be thankful.
All right. There you go.
I'm just going to throw it out there.
All right.
Yeah. So
Wink, wink.
So the first game that my wife ever got me was actually Power Grid, because I had wanted Power Grid, but she found a deal on it, and we weren't actually married at the time. We were, dating, and she wrapped it up and gave me a copy of Power Grid, but it wasn't wrapped. It was just, she found a good deal somewhere, and she thought, oh, this is awesome, and she gave me a copy of it. At the time, we barely knew each other. I was like, thanks. Like, I didn't know how to take it, but obviously it was from her, so I really did appreciate it.
Yeah.
I still have that Power Grid to this day. But it was interesting because I, up to that point, had never bought a used game for my collection. Now, because I buy, sell, trade all the time online, I am in that market, but I still think it's sometimes awkward to give a gift to somebody else. Even if the game's like $50, maybe it's $7 in shrink wrap, I don't necessarily play it. I know somebody else likes it, but, I always ask my wife, should I just give this to a person for Christmas, even though it's not in shrink wrap, and she's okay with it. I've never done it because I'm not okay with it necessarily. So that's kind of where this topic came about. And maybe you out there, the listeners, you guys have this same dilemma where you have really great games like Wingspan that you didn't want to get rid of to somebody else that really wants it, but it's not shrink wrap. So, do you give that to them, or do you try to sell it for $5 online? What do you do with that? And that's kind of where this topic came from. So.
I'll give you an example that's actually more recent, David, and it might make you rethink of, well, gee, you said you're not okay with it. You recently got me a copy of Baseball Highlights 2045. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember if that was a used copy or not. I think it was.
It was, yeah.
And
So
that was a
out
great
of print.
gift, right? And it was a great gift because you saw it was on my wish list. I hadn't pulled the trigger. I wasn't even sure where to find it. And you pull out this hey, I saw you wanted Baseball Highlights 24. I wasn't sitting there saying, this is a used copy. I was sitting there thinking, my gosh, that's very thoughtful. I can't wait to play this game.
Yeah, I do think it's different because when I gift stuff to board gamers, I think there's an expectation, like if you're in kind of like our hobby, that's acceptable. But I think sometimes, like when I gift it to my sister-in-law, if she's not playing games, she's like, thanks for this open copy of some random game. And so I think sometimes the reaction's different, even though I'm like, that game's like $60.
Yeah.
Still, even you.
I guess
so,
you could liken
yeah.
it with clothes, right? Like, are you going to... I shop at Goodwill all the time, but are you going to Goodwill and finding somebody like a vintage Burberry raincoat? Please, all day I'll take that type of thing.
Hey, I need one of those.
Used thong? No, not so much. You might want to, not gift that to somebody. So I think it matters too on like not that price is everything, but you might be able to find some good vintage thing that makes sense for that person that they're going to cherish, and it's worth something to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks, David, for that topic. If you guys have opinions on used games, we'd love to know about them and what you have to say. Let us know by sending us an email at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media or check out our website at fifthmeeple.com. And if you really want to help us grow and spread the word, tell your friends about our podcast and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may listen. And today we have an actual review. David's going to read it for us.
Yeah, so this person, her name's Amanda, and she gave us her last name, but I'll just say her last name starts with a B, so it fits perfectly in this. So we'll just call her Amanda B.
Buzz, buzz.
But she says, I'm listening to your latest episode today. I love hearing the battle of the Funnest and hearing you talk through games that I haven't played. Although sometimes it just makes me want to go out and spend more money. LOL. I'm always looking forward to what you guys are putting out next. So thank you, Amanda B. Appreciate that great review, and we'd love to read yours. If you guys ever send us some in, we'd love to get it on there.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes.
Thanks, Amanda.
All right, let's stop bumbling along and get started on our discussion of Honey Buzz.
Honey Buzz is a 1 to 4 player worker placement, pattern building, and contract fulfillment game where your queen bee has decided to go commercial. So it's time to build the hive, find nectar, make honey, and set up shop. On your turn, you'll place one or more of your bees in an area to draft a honeycomb tile. The number of bees you use must be one greater than the current largest stack located there. You then take that tile and place it into your hive in a honeycomb pattern. Each time you complete a ring in your hive, you activate all of the actions shown on that ring's tiles. The actions include foraging, collecting nectar tiles for your hive based on the cell's pattern, or gaining pollen for later use. Producing, adding honey to your nectar tiles for later sale. Going to the market, selling pollen or honey to the market, or completing an order with your collected resources, getting a new bee, moving one of your previously unavailable bees to the nursery to be collected and used later, accounting, gaining coins from the supply, and of course the decree, a wild action that can be any of the 5 previously mentioned actions. The game continues in turn-wise fashion, with players also having the opportunity to earn coins or points by satisfying the special conditions of 3 Queens contests. The value of selling pollen and nectar decreases with each sale, and the game ends when 4 of the resources hit the minimum sales price, or when 2 of the 3 order stacks have been depleted. Players earn points for their coins, Queens contests, completed orders, and remaining resources. The player with the most points wins the game, but what they do after that is none of your beeswax. Honey Buzz was designed by Paul Solomon and was first published in 2020 by Elf Creek Games.
All right, Chris, thanks for that review. All right, so guys, playing Honey Buzz, what are some of the things that may stand out to you and make the game enjoyable?
I think there are multiple paths to victory here. Money is worth points equal to, you got $20, you got 20 points, right? And that's huge. And you can legitimately win by just chasing cash the whole time. You don't have to chase any points, and you can win that way. I think, David, you were going after, I can't remember if you pulled it off, but you were just going the big money route. And I think you did, because you had stacks and stacks of cash. I sometimes wonder if the cash routes may be a little too overpowered, but there are things you can do to maybe head someone off. In that last game, David, you were collecting nectar like crazy, and I just saw this pile of nectar in front of you, and I'm looking at nectar like $7 per piece, and I knew you were looking to sell, and so I had one nectar. I was like, I got to sell that. And I think somebody else sold, and just drove that down to where by the time you sold it, you didn't get anywhere near as much as you could have. But man, one round earlier and it was over. I think it was still over, but it's very powerful, and you have to pay attention to that. But I like that. You don't just have to chase the orders. You don't have to go after certain things. There are a couple of different paths you can follow and legitimately be able to win it.
Yeah, I was going to just say, I love the mechanic that money is points. I like that in games. I think it adds a different dynamic because, it makes money valuable when you spend it, and then it also counts as points. So you're kind of losing points. I like that dynamic that always brings. But you're right. You guys did a really good job that game, because I think it was, you and Pete, you guys saw that. I think even Dave saw that. And the next thing I know, I had, I think, 7 pollen. Nobody else had any pollen, but you guys just got one and just sold it all in consecutive order. So when it came back to me, I couldn't do that. And, I think that's the way the game should be played, because when you see that, I like that the game allows other players to interact with them and try to react to that and manipulate the market in that way. So I think that was really good as far as, try to counteract people's strategy, as everything's kind of open information on the board as far as resources go.
As far as resources go, too, there's some competition for those flowers and that nectar when you're out, trying to collect that. And in order to really take advantage of that, you buzz around and you land on a tile. And if you're on that tile and you have the opportunity to do a collection and you have a completed area honeycomb that has an available slot for it, then you can place that in there. And that's one way of getting some additional points on, collecting resources. There's some steep competition for those too, because they can go real quick. And some of those Queens contests, may say have X amount of this or X amount of that, and those disappear really quick. And once those flowers are gone, you don't have that opportunity to get that, or potentially even fulfill an order that uses that honey that you may not have.
We're going to talk about that later, Pete. We're definitely going to talk about it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit. But this was one of the games, though, that also I backed early on, and I do have my name in the box. So
cool.
When they did that was kind of one of the features that they did. They put all of the backers in it. So I was really, really happy to be a part of that.
Oh, I see what you did there. I think, too, the components of this game are actually pretty unique. I know some of the colors are harder to see in the nectar, and I think the one game we played with Dave, he was like, I was going after the wrong one, but I do like that it's like a little jelly, and like it's unique. And I think all the components too, they're bright colors. It looks nice on the table. It's a little small, but I think overall it's just different, and I think that I like that about the game.
It's a little small, but depending on how you grow your hive, it can still get. Front of you. Mm-hmm. And trying to move that hive, that's a whole other thing.
Oh yeah.
I also like that you can be successful. We saw it in our last game, actually. You don't have to have 10 bees or whatever the maximum amount is. I think it's beneficial if you have them, but it can also be beneficial while someone else is building up their bees. You're doing all this kind of stuff and pulling back extra. Typically, in a worker placement, if I can get an extra guy, that's an immediate advantage. And we saw in the last game, it was a 4-player game, two of the players, Dave and our fifth people, Dave, I think they only had 3 bees. Maybe Pete, you had 3 bees.
It was me, yeah.
And you guys were doing incredibly well. I'm sitting here with 8 bees, and I'm just watching you guys blow me away, which I thought was interesting. Hey, I have more bees, but you're able to just do what you need to do with your less bees.
Yeah, that was one of the Queen's contests to have the least amount of bees. But in addition to that, there's a big aspect of timing on this game. Because as you stated, if you want a particular tile or you want to go to a particular location and grab that particular tile, maybe a nursery tile or one that allows you to sell something, you have to have more bees go to that location than is the highest. A lot of times you're waiting for, is Chris going to pull back his bees? He may have a whole bunch of them, but you still have to pull them back. And I like the timing aspect of this game where all of a sudden those things open up and then I can think a little bit differently on what do I want to do and how do I want to take advantage of it. And in addition to that, when you're building those tiles and you're placing them in your hive, the location and the way that you turn it really makes a difference because it allows you to take the different kind of flowers in. And we all start with the same setup, but it's amazing how quickly they all diverge into something differently. Because again, we all can't do the same thing because there just isn't that many flowers of that type out there. So I like that about the game.
Yeah, I mean, I like, too, everything you said, Pete, but just the way that you do actions in this game, like you could set yourself up for monster turns and just have like one really weak turn and then have monster turns because of how you build your honeycomb and how you stack those, those tiles in there in a certain way so that when they trigger, you can do a lot more actions on some turns than others, where at other times you might want to be more consistent and say, hey, I just want to make sure I'm always doing 3 things every time I complete something. But there are times in there where I think you're right with the timing, that if you time things right, it might be beneficial for you to hold off a little bit more and get one huge mega turn than getting all these little smaller ones. I think there's just different avenues, and the game gives you that flexibility to decide for yourself when you're going to take those turns and how you're going to do it. And I think that's very interesting because I don't think a lot of games allow you to both do the timing and do the actions and pick all of it and what time you want to do it as far as how many things you get to do. It's based off how you're building that hive yourself, which I think is very unique about a game, especially this one.
All right, let's talk about some of the things that maybe didn't go off as well as we would have liked in the game. Got a little sticky, little honey on it.
You want to just go down your list or what?
I think overall, the game didn't feel very cohesive. It felt more puzzly, like and I love puzzles, where I'm trying to figure out how I'm moving on each different section of the game board. I know at one point I was making the nectar and I finally figured out, I have to sell this at certain places to get certain amounts of dollars to come for income. But then there were other times where the nectar that I had wouldn't fill any of the Queen's contracts that I was looking to make. And there was so much going on that I didn't fully grasp, I think, the puzzle or the game within it. And it was a little choppy, a little messy for me. So overall, the cohesiveness of it just didn't really stick with me, I guess. So.
Yeah. And you touched on something there, and Pete did earlier as well. In the very last game that we played of this, one of the Queen's races, the things that we were going after was be the first one to get 3 nectars of the same kind. And Pete and David both went after the wildflower, and there's only 6 out there, and they both got 3 of each, which meant that our fifth meeple, Dave and me, had no wildflower, right? Whether we wanted to, it's just, okay, there's no other way to get it. And every stinking order that came out needed 1 wildflower. And there's no way we could ever get any. You can't go buy any, you can't do anything. And it was a little bit frustrating where there's literally, I could have bought one earlier, but I was chasing my own stuff, and it just happened to be their position to where Pete and David could both get them early, and Dave and I are just sitting there staring at each other like there's nothing we can do. Nothing we can do.
Yeah, a little stuck.
That was a weird game because I looked over at Pete and I was like, well, we don't even have to race for those contracts because I'm racing as Pete, so I just have to pay attention to what he's doing. And Dave and Chris, every time we flipped one of those contracts over, and it had that honey on it, they would groan, and it was pretty funny. If you, to me and Pete, probably because we had the nectar available to us. But there are a lot of cards in there. It was just kind of random chance. So for those of you who haven't played the game before, there's a lot of cards. You're supposed to shuffle them up. There's different strengths, and so the higher point ones you put on the bottom, and then you put a certain amount on top for player order. I mean, how many players there are. And it just so happened that game, almost every single one of them had the honey that, we were racing for, just in random chance too, with the gold card that happened to line up with, the ones that they needed. So that was a very interesting game.
Well, just a few little things I got. This only does play 4 players. I wish it could do more, but that's okay for what it's worth. I think the balance of the game works out. I think we played it at 3 players. It works just as well, 3, 4 players. So I think there's just a different amount of honey or flowers that come out based upon the player. So it scales fairly well. The one few items that are kind of, I don't want to call them nitpicks, but I often forget to collect nectar. If one of your actions is to move your bee to another location, if you cannot take that flower because you don't have a space for it in your hive, you can collect pollen. And that's one of the things I think in one of the first few games that either we were missing, because I always forget that. And the problem that I have with it is when you do a pullback action, you get to move your bee, but you don't get to collect it. So I don't like the games where you do the same action, but there's a different outcome depending upon where you're at in that play or that action turn, whether because you have a pullback action and then you have an action when you complete one of your cells. So that's one of the things that kind of just I gotta keep in mind and remember that there's a difference, because your instinct is I want to move my bee and collect something. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, the only nitpick I really have is I've had a hard time. There's a reference card. It tries to show you everything. I have a hard time being able to look at that reference card and quickly say, okay, which one am I looking for? And okay, you're looking for the pattern that has a certain reds and the certain whites. I just haven't found that easy to use. I don't know why. Mm-hmm. That's not easy for me to use, but it's not. Every time I look at that, I'm like, I can't find what I'm looking for, or my mind won't click on it. And maybe it's a me thing, but I see heads nodding around the table too. So
yeah, I found that the pattern was difficult when I was looking for a certain thing, and then I would put it on. I'm like, oh, I have to build on this side of my honeycomb, and I'm like, I don't want to go over there. So I don't know. It was a little messy.
Yeah, that's supposedly aspect of it. The one thing I will say, the copy that I have is the deluxe version, and the pollen looks nothing like the cards, because the pollens are these really great components. But when you look at the cards, you're like, what's that icon mean? And it does not look like it.
It looks like a gold nugget, right?
Yeah,
it looks like
a gold nugget. Yeah.
Looks like a little gold nugget. So, yeah, that's just something else. But again, once you recognize that's what it is, then you're good to go.
All right, those are our sticking points. So, David, why don't you take us over to the collector's corner?
Yeah. So right now, at the time of filming this, I don't know. Honeybuzz came out in 2020, so it's been a little time, and the marketplace seems like it's doing some weird things. So normally I'd recommend going on Amazon, if you don't live by a game store or anything like that. And right now on Amazon, there's a scalper on there, and he's selling these copies for $100, and that's all there is. So I did some quick research. On Walmart, if you have a walmart.com or you can get to Walmart, they do sell Honeybuzz on that site for $39.97. So that might be your best bet, not Amazon this time. But if you go to a local board game store, I was just taking some prices for the online ones, maybe just type in board games online. They're selling this game between $32 and $35. So that's kind of where this game is. On the used market, the very base game is going anywhere between $20 and $25, and there's not very many base game copies. What people are selling a lot more of is the deluxeified version that I know Pete has. I also own it. I think they produced a lot of these potentially, and those are still going between $65 and $75 used. But the components are really nice, I will say that. On there's some acrylic tiles and some other stuff, but that's kind of, if you're looking at this game, the price range varies just based off what you're trying to do, but you could probably get a copy for around $30.
Your wooden coins, are those part of the standard deluxe pack, or that was even an additional add-on to that?
No, that was an additional add-on. I bought the Fall Flavors, I think was an expansion. I haven't opened that one up yet, but I did get the wooden components, which, again, they are very cute. They're acorns and different kinds of pine cones and that. So it does make the game a little bit nicer. We played with David's copy and we were like, what are these things there? I don't know. Like the components, again, with the money, I like them. They're wooden. Normally I wouldn't be too happy about it, but it is a little bit thematic, being in the nature. So I'll give that one a slide because, it doesn't have to be metal all the time.
The wooden coins I liked a lot. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed those a lot.
Easy to pick up, easy to see the difference on them.
That's some heft to them.
Yeah. All right. Final thoughts, David.
For what Honey Buzz is and the time that it takes to play, I was looking at our average time is around 45 minutes to 50 minutes. I think this game fills that niche. If you're looking for the code word nowadays is cozy game, I think this fits that bill. I think the more you play it, the more things come out. I do think maybe your first play could be a little confusing if you don't have somebody that's played it before, but I think you can get over that really fast, and that this game moves fairly fast. I think the turns are really fast in this game, and I think that helps it. There's not so much you can do unless somebody stacks like 5 actions in a row when they complete their thing, but normally it's flowing pretty fast, and for that kind of game, if you're looking for that, I think it's a good find for what it offers, especially for if you're buying at that kind of entry level and trying to get somebody into the hobby. It might be just a step above a gateway game. I'm going to kick it over to Pete.
Yeah, I was one of the original backers on it. I'm glad I backed it. I did get the expansions and all that stuff, so I'm glad I have it. This is one of those games that I don't have a lot of desire to get it to the table all the time, but when I do, I have an enjoyable play. It's kind of like having tacos for me at home. While I'm making them, I'm thinking, oh, they'll be okay. And then when I eat them, that was good. But then I got to clean.
It's like you had tacos.
Then I got to clean up the mess and put all this stuff away. And so that's kind of how I feel about it. Chris.
I liked Honey Buzz. I don't love it. I'm kind of in the category you just described. I'm not going to ask somebody, hey, let's play Honey Buzz. But if you say, hey, do you want to play Honey Buzz? I'll do that. I'm probably going to want to play it once, and then I'll be okay. But when I'm doing it, I enjoyed it, and it's not so long. If it was a longer game, I wouldn't want to play it. But for the length it is, I'll take it.
Yeah, I think overall, I'm gonna have to give this game a couple more plays before I give it. Before I should say toss it out with the baby with the bathwater. But yeah, overall, I think the components are really cute. They're nice. I enjoy the bee theme, honestly, a lot. I know our next theme is going to be bee themed as well. So I like that whole shtick that they have. But yeah, I need to play the game a couple more times before I give them a good final thought. So those are our thoughts. Well, it's closing time at the Meadow Market, but there's no such thing as night in space. So let's blast into our discussion of Apiary.
Apiary is a 1 to 5 player worker and tile placement game where you control a unique faction of spacefaring bees attempting to thrive in the final frontier. Each player controls a team of bees, each valued at various times between 1 and 4. On your turn, you'll place one of those bees onto the board, taking the action associated with that area of the ship. This action may allow you to collect resources like water, pollen, or fiber, obtain tiles to place into your ship, granting one-time or ongoing abilities, expand your hive, gain seed cards for later use or game end bonuses, gain new workers, convert resources, or even create dances for new future actions. The power of that ability is determined by the value of your bee and sometimes the value of another bee located in the same area. Using a bee of value 4 also provides an additional bonus. These placement locations cannot be blocked. Instead, existing bees would be bumped, returning to the owner's active pool while leveling up or waiting in a landing area for later retrieval. If you're out of worker bees, or if you just want to, you can instead choose to retrieve your bees, removing them from the board and increasing their inherent value. Each bee of value 1 to 3 can also activate 1 income tile in your hive. Any bees of value 4, however, are forced to hibernate, gaining you a bonus, but taking them out of the game until you add them back with a later action. The game ends when the hibernation chamber is full or when any player hibernates their 7th bee. In addition to points gathered during the game, players earn additional points from hibernation chamber majorities, seed cards, certain hive tiles, their position on the queen's favorite track, full hive mats, and their faction's end game ability. The player with the most points wins the game, while everyone else will make like a bee and buzz off. Apiary was designed by Connie Vogelman and was first published in 2023 by Stonemaier Games.
All right. Great summary there, Chris. Let's talk about some of the things in Apiary that are unique, that are fun, that maybe made the game a little bit more enjoyable for us.
The theme is dumb and it's brilliant at the same time. I think once you get past that initial, okay, all right, bees in space, what are we doing here? Get past that and just allow yourself, okay, accept the theme. Then I think it works. And I appreciate some nerdy sci-fi. And so when I first like, okay, what are you talking about? I really, really appreciate that theme at this point.
Yeah, I had that thought as well, Chris, because I'm like, it would have been fine of just bees out in a meadow, like somewhere, like the same thing could have been done, but it's like little bees with the helmets on. And I'm kind of like, all right, the crossover I could have done without.
The thing that I like about the game is the workers actually spinning up and having a different value. That it's not new to games. I know there's other games that done it. One of the games I enjoy, Age of Atlantis, has that feature where you spin up the die or spin it down. And that makes for some interesting decisions and potentially, how strong of an action that you have. And as you're pulling those bees back, you have to make that decision. Do you want to just spin them up and use them again right away? Or do you want them to go to the landing pad so they can trigger more actions when you finally do a pullback action? So I think that's kind of, I don't want to say it's super unique, but I think that's what makes this game a little bit special for me as far as worker placement, having a value of that worker.
Mm-hmm. You have to plan that correctly too on your move to make sure you're not like, oh no, I needed that number, but I only have this. I remember that was a big point.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that flows into my next point about this game that I really like is just that bumping mechanic. Normally worker placement, you're placing a worker out there and you're blocking off a space. In Apiary, you can't do that. Anybody else could go to that space. They just knock your bee off and they could power it up and do different things to it. And there's that mechanic of, where am I placing my bee at? Because sometimes you just want it to get bumped off, so you keep powering up your bees early in the game. And then other times you don't necessarily want it to get bumped off, or maybe it's situational and you're trying to do other things on the board. And I just think that whole bumping mechanic, I've seen it now in a couple other newer games, and I can't really remember this being a real thing in worker placement. And typical worker placement is you're going somewhere to block somebody for that round. And I like this mechanic that every space is open to you, but it might not be beneficial for you necessarily to go there because you might be helping out somebody else. You're kind of always helping out somebody else when you do that. So unless they pull themselves off and you're waiting for that opportunity. So I think that's pretty cool. And for me, unique about this game as well. And, I'm seeing it now more and more in worker placement, which I kind of like in some degrees, but in other degrees, I don't know yet where I take on it is.
And there's a lot of things that come into that. It's not just, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to bump David off. I want to go, I don't want to bump him off. I want to make him retrieve. But it's also, you talked about timing, I think, Peter. Or did you talk about timing in the previous game?
That was in the previous one.
Yeah. It's also a timing thing where I want to go to an area when someone's got their 3B there, not when someone's got their 1B there, so that I can take advantage of their power and get a more powerful action. And when you're going to do it, then someone else goes there with their 1, and now they stuck you not being able to do with it. It's a kind of thing, and you feel good if you're the one that's doing it to someone else.
Yeah. I'll also say the BGA Board Game Arena has a good implementation of the game. Chris and I know we played quite a few games of these on there, and I did enjoy it on there. I think it was just a little bit more enjoyable for me than sitting around the table doing it.
Yeah, Pete and I do this thing where we play, rather than real time, we play turn based, but then we end up playing real time even though we're playing turn based. We start to get into it, and it's like, okay, halfway through the game, we just sit there and just keep going back and forth.
Well, how could you possibly track over a day, like what your last move was?
Wait, that's when you take your notes, and there's some notes up there. You say, okay, whenever it's my turn again, I want to do this, but it can be harder. It can be harder to keep in mind what you're trying to do.
Yeah. I think in this game, I truly enjoyed watching what other people were doing, learning from each individual, trying to see what they were doing. And I liked exploring each spot. You can go to that explorer, you can go to the hibernation, you can go to all these things. I remember at the one point I wanted a carved tile, and I went and I got the one that I wanted. I had made all my moves to go and get that. And there was something really satisfying about getting what I needed because I needed it for end game or whatever else I was working towards in that game. But I truly liked going and seeing, okay, if I go in the upper right-hand corner, like what are those 3 tiles that I I was getting over in the advanced track and stuff. And so I just thought that the board was fun to explore, try different things, and then watch what other people were doing. And I think that this game did a good job of just being interested in what was going on. I mean, yeah, I was waiting for other people to go around, but I didn't really feel bored because I'm constantly planning, what am I going to do next? And oh no, someone went to the spot that I wanted to go to, but okay, I guess I'll go to that next spot. But then, oh no, I'm not going to be able to turn my bee over because now I'm not in the spot I want to be. So it was a lot of good planning for me in this game that I liked.
I think there's also, we talk about this a lot as a good thing. There's multiple paths to win here as well. In several games, we've had players take 0 carve tiles, and then other players taking 2 or 3. You can score well in both ways. In our last game, I think first and second place were by players who didn't have any carve tiles. And I think it's all a matter of, well, what are your abilities? Is it because you can spend a lot of time trying to get those carve tiles, and sure, you got one that scored a lot, but you spent a lot of time not getting points from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you have something that, okay, I can actually make honey relatively quickly or with more efficiency, then I can chase after it. But you don't have to go one path. There are several paths you can go to, many of them which can be fruitful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We spend a lot of time trashing rule books and things like that. There's a really good reference in this rule book. There's like 3 different rule books in there. I think 2 rule books and a solo thing. And there's a reference for every tile in there. If you need to know what it does, you go to that book and you look it up and it tells you exactly, because I know we had a question, well, what does that really mean? You go to that reference, it tells you exactly what it means. You don't have any questions about, are we applying this right? In so many games, we just like, we're just gonna do this. Do we all agree? You didn't have to do this here. There's that great reference that explains everything. And the icon reference is really good as well. Mm-hmm. I never really had a case where I couldn't figure out, okay, what does this mean? And I found it relatively quickly as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love when games do that. They go through every tile. I know it's more work probably for the publisher to put that in there, but it is so helpful because a lot of times you do have that just one issue. You just don't know how that tile necessarily works. You can read it different ways. Yeah. And so for them to have that explanation in there, I found that very helpful too. And I love when games do that.
All right, let's talk about some of the things that maybe had us lacking oxygen and space in this game.
The theme's stupid.
Yes. Yes, as discussed, doesn't make sense.
I'm gonna laugh when they find highly intelligent bees out there, and then they come visit us.
Yeah.
And you guys will all be the stupid.
That's going to be whatever that big comet is that one guy keeps claiming is actually a spaceship. It's going to be driven by bees.
Yeah,
bees,
yeah.
3-eye Atlas is coming for us. Yeah, by the time this airs, it's probably going to be close to Earth here. Now, the other thing that I would say is some of the cards that we get can be very powerful. And other times you draw them and they're just duds. And, you can turn them in for a resource. But getting those cards, it's a lot of work. And just to be able to turn it into a resource or something like that can be, it doesn't feel good to me. If you get the right card at the right time, it can be super powerful. But I have a hard time digging through those cards and utilize them. And then being actually able to plant them is another step, and that's going to get you X amount of points. I don't know. I don't like the cards.
I like them if I can get them. I need the mat that gives me cards for free. And to me, that's a very powerful thing. If I can have a free card, or I can have a free fiber or something, I want the one that gives me free cards. Yeah. Because it is hard to get them, but yeah, you get the right one, they can be powerful.
Yeah. And the good news is, you don't have to necessarily go down that route, but I do think that cards are pretty powerful in this game. So, yeah, avoid them as you may.
Well, I think the last game that we were playing, Dave had a handful of cards, and he was doing lots of stuff. He likes doing it. And again, to the point, there's lots of different paths to victory, and I just struggle with that portion of it. I was trying to go after carve tiles because I was trying to leverage the power that my faction had, which was get the most points for having the blue tiles, which were whatever. I tried to lean into that, and it just didn't work out for me. And I think you can go after these things. It just really depends on what comes out and if you're going to score a lot of points.
So in one of the games I played, the farms that come out allow you to store honey and whatever that Rolo looking piece is. Yeah, wax. And in some of the games that I played, you don't actually see farms for a while that have those holders. And so it could really delay the pace of this game because you only start some factions. I don't even know if they start with any, but some only start with like one spot to hold either a honey or a wax. And I remember a specific game I was playing with somebody that we didn't see almost any of those farm tiles come out for a long time, and it delayed the progress of the game. And the game took us 2 hours. I just looked back on the timing. It was 2 hours and 4 minutes. And normally this game's only taken us around like an hour that we, when we play, when we know, but it delayed the game so much. I almost wonder if there should be like a tiered stack where, maybe, I don't know how, because everything's just the same value, but they're not really the same value because some of them can allow you to store stuff that is needed for end game. And so it just really pushed back our progress during that game because we had to buy farm tiles just so that we can find farm tiles that would hold wax and honey. And so it was, maybe it's just a unique game and that's just the way the cookie crumbled that time. But I remember being frustrated because, when one of those tiles come up, somebody grab it. It was a huge advantage because, as we're trying to turn through that deck, trying to find another one. And that person was like just zooming at that point because we had our economies built up. So that was a little bit of a negative for me. It's just the randomness of that tile.
I was going to touch on that advance track as well. The farm, the recruit, and the development, all three of those. I think we had more farm come out, but a lot of the recruitment tiles were not used. Very few developments because you couldn't get them moving through with what anybody really needed. So that was, I think, a thing that did lag in the one game that we played.
Yeah, I have a note down here that the pace of the game feels very unpredictable, which could be a good thing because as we're talking about, the games from one game to another can feel quite a bit different. But to me, it doesn't feel... I don't know. It just doesn't feel.
Yeah, the pacing's a little bit weird.
The pacing can be off.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Sometimes it's like lightning fast. Everybody's filling that bottom track up, that achievement track, and then all of a sudden it just stops for like 4 or 5 rounds. I think a lot of sometimes it doesn't, but a lot of times it does, and then we're all just rebuilding. There's this weird like buffer phase where you feel like it's not always that game arc where it's just climaxing till the end. It's like climax and then just a huge drop like a roller coaster to just try to build up and then just stops abruptly.
Everybody's got the low value Bs and it's who can get their B up to a 4 first.
Exactly.
Well, and that's where it comes to where you're talking about you don't want to bump somebody who has a 4 on there because they're going to be able to hibernate and potentially score a majority down in the bottom and things like that. So there's a lot of good things about the game. I just feel like there's too much for me.
All right. Well, let's transition to the collector's corner. David, tell us about the game.
Yeah, so right now, if you're looking on Amazon at the time of this recording, it's going for $75 on Amazon right now. I would suggest looking just like your local board game stores that are just online only, and you're seeing this game more around the $60 price point. If you want it used, I've seen used copies on BGG going for anywhere between $40 and $45, but then again, you're having to ship them to you. So take that all with a grain of salt. I think if you want this game, you're probably paying around the $60 mark on average for the game right now.
All right, and final thoughts going around, starting with David.
Yeah, for me, Apiary, when I played this game at first, I was kind of like everybody else. The theme didn't really connect. I was like, what is this box? I don't know if I was into the art. And I was really surprised with how the game sat. When I actually got to the table, saw the different things it was doing, I feel like I've barely touched all the different kind of bees factions. Every time I'm excited to see what draw I'll get because I think they play vastly different according to what you get and if you really want to lean on those powers. And for me it's been, I guess, a good experience just because I haven't had any expectations with this game going into it, which normally I have an expectation. This game I was like, well, I don't know what it's going to do, and it exceeded those expectations, which is good for me. But I'm just going to put it there. I'm going to kick it over to Pete.
Yeah, this one has not exceeded my expectations. While I enjoy the mechanics and I can appreciate how they all go together, it just doesn't do it for me. And I don't know how any other way to explain that, but this game just doesn't sing to me. Okay. Chris?
The first time I played Apiary, I wasn't a big fan. The more I played it, the more I like it. I feel like I've played it enough now to where I understand the mechanisms, and I enjoy that puzzle that they present to me. And we've talked about, hey, sometimes you can't do A, B, and C, but you can still do D, E, and F, and just you find that and you explore a different area of the game. I like that. I'm not probably willing to spend what David was talking about at this point, but if someone else has it on their shelf, I'll play it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised at how much I actually did enjoy the game and discovering the different just places on the board game. I thought it was going to be, for the weight, it's at 3. I thought it was going to be a harder learn than it really was, because I think of how some of those cards and the components were very well spelled out. I knew what I was kind of going for and was just able to try some things. I saw what other people were doing. So I think that there is more game there to be discovered. And it's something that, play back-to-back games, or if you can play it over a long weekend, play a couple games if you can get it out there, just to really delve in and discover what it all has for you. So, all right, guys, the Hive wants a new queen. So let's head into today's Battle of the Funnest.
All right, everyone, the moment of truth has arrived. We are separating the men from the boys and the games from the toys, pitting these games head-to-head against each other in the ultimate face-off. In one corner, weighing in at 2.71 out of 5, with an overall BGG rating of 7.5, swarming into the meadow market like a Porsche when you park it, gathering rosemary and acacia like an Apian geisha, the over-lectured nectar collector, the wildflower wizard, the pollinator innovator, it floats like a butterfly but stings like a bee, Honeybuzz. In the other corner, weighing in at 3.0 out of 5 with an overall BGG rating of 7.7, rising over generations as a spacefaring nation, calling the comb home while they roam the unknown, the Queen's combatant, the interstellar hive dweller, the yellow-faced insect race from outer space, Apiary. And now let's see which game has the genes of a queen in today's battle of the Funnest Showdown. For anyone new to the show, we're going to evaluate these games head-to-head in 5 different categories: theme and production, mechanisms, value for your time, replayability, and the fun factor. The game that gets the most votes wins each category, and the game that wins the most categories takes the prize in our Battle of the Funnest. So let's find out who gets the honey and who gets the stinger. We'll get it started with theme and production. I'll start with Pete.
It's been said here more than once, the theme in Apiary is dumb. I don't know how else to put it. Bees in space, it just doesn't do it for me. Honeybuzz, it makes a little bit more sense. Bees make honey. That's what they do. And now they're just selling it. So I'll go with theme and production is going to be Honeybuzz for me. Also, along with that, I do have the deluxe version. The components are nice. They're nice in Apiary, but I do appreciate the deluxe version available in Honeybuzz. Daniela.
All right. I'm actually going to go with Honeybuzz as well. I do think I love the color scheme a lot more. I've only played with the deluxeified version, so that probably might be a little unfair, but that for me was nice on the table, good components. Pete, you helped sway my opinion there. David.
Yeah, so before I preface that, the base version of Honeybuzz still does have kind of those jelly things and stuff like that. So you're still getting premium components throughout that. But obviously with the deluxe fight, you're getting some wooden money and some other cool stuff. But as far as this battle goes, I don't think that Apiary theme is necessarily dumb. So if you want to send us hate mails, direct it over to Pete and Chris. But I will say that Honeybuzz just does it better for me. I love the artwork. I love the way it looks at the table. I do like the components that come with it. And the theme makes a little bit more sense. I will say that too. So for those reasons, and maybe I'm just in a cozy vibe today, I'm going to go with Honeybuzz as well. Kicking it over to Chris.
Okay, for the record, I said the theme was dumb but brilliant. Dumb but brilliant.
Okay, just send it over to Pete then.
The theme for Honeybuzz to me is a bit tired. It's okay, anthropomorphic animals interacting and running a market. Find me 500 games and they all do that. Apiary, find me 500 games with bees in space. You're not going to do it. All right. So there's other space games. There's other bee games. There's no other bees in space games. So the theme, it's off the wall. Well, it's off the wall, but I accept it. And the incorporation of dances is a nice touch there. That she was able to put the bee stuff in there. For production, the Apiary board to me is a bit busy. I thought you liked it, Daniela. You had said at one point that you liked the way the board looked for Apiary. I don't. It hurts me more than it helps me to understand what's going on there. But it is a nice mothership. The bee meeples or the beeples are nice. They work. Honeybuzz to me is nothing special, although those nectar pieces are kind of nice. I think the reference cards we mentioned are tough to follow. I'm just milking it because it's the only vote for Apiary. I'm voting for Apiary for theme and production. It doesn't matter. Honeybuzz takes theme and production. We move on to mechanisms, and I'll go to Daniela.
All right, so I'm going to give this one over to Apiary because, again, with the weight that it was and the simplicity of how it moved through the game, I could choose something to do and go through it. Honeybuzz, thoroughly confused, didn't know when to get a newbie, didn't know money, didn't understand the accounting, didn't understand why I'm moving through this field, turning over little, I don't know, pollinator things. I don't know, just the different things just did not work for my brain. I feel like I should have just understood it. I didn't. Tough. Back to you, Chris.
Yeah, I think about what makes each one unique on mechanisms. For Honeybuzz, I do like putting the tiles together, forming your honeycomb pattern. Maybe that increasing worker placement is maybe a little unique, where you need to add bigger stacks to do it. But actually, a couple weeks before that, we played the Manhattan Project Energy Empire, where you were doing something very similar, so maybe not super unique. For Apiary, I like that increasing strength as you pull back the bees. Again, maybe not totally unique. I like the dances, but they were never hugely popular in our play, but I like that they were there. This one's close for me, but probably because neither one really stands out massively. But with the maturing and eventual hibernation, Apiary takes mechanisms for me. I'll kick it to David.
So for this one, it's going against, I want to say Honeybuzz, which I love that money is points. I'm not even sure that's a real mechanism, but I love it in my games that money is points. I feel like it just does so much. But when I think about Apiary and all just the little kind of mini games that you can play, I feel like almost, and just the fact that you just have so much leverage on kind of what you get. Like, we didn't even talk about how when you flip over a planet, a lot of times you could dictate what the resources are going to be. And there's not a lot of games where you can do that. And then everybody else has to just follow suit. And that's what's going to be on that planet. And I kind of like that too. So overall, when I think about all the mechanisms, I'm going to lean towards Apiary this time. That's where my vote's going. I will kick it over to Pete.
Yeah, we're going to sweep this one as well. Apiary does have a lot of different mechanics. I think they do incorporate them together well. As you said, you're doing some resource collection. You're taking those resources, you're buying the extra tiles, you're getting bonuses as you're pulling back. And the other thing that I really do like is the spin up on those bees and actually having to make them hibernate and just the timing mechanism of it. Also, tile laying games are not in my most favorite category. So, Carcassonne and things like that don't call to me a lot. So I'm going to go with Apiary on this one.
All right, so Apiary sweeps mechanisms. We now have a 1-1 tie so far in our battle. We will go to value for your time. I'm going to start here with respect to average playing time for the games that I've played with different groups. Honeybuzz averages just over an hour. Apiary's an hour 45 for my plays. So Apiary is almost twice as long, but I get more out of Apiary than I do Honeybuzz. So for the value for my time, it's Apiary. I'll kick it back to Pete.
Yeah, my times on that are the same that you got. When I think about value for my time, I always think about how easily I can get to the game to the table, who I'm going to be playing this with. This one was fairly close to me, but I'm going to go with Honeybuzz because I think I can get a depth of strategy. Now, granted, it's not all over the board, but for the play that I'm getting and trying to configure my hive and get the most points and a little bit of area, grabbing those flowers. For me, the value for my time on that, it's just going to be Honeybuzz. I'm going to go over to Daniela.
Yeah, this is a hard one again. I fully admit I need to play probably Honeybuzz a few more times. But that initial instinct of what I'm thinking of is that Honeybuzz has this more puzzly aspect to it where I just never felt really into the game. I never felt like I was understanding, and at the time I just I was kind of looking at the time like, how long is this taking us, and when is this game going to be over, and when does it trigger the ending? And so I think Apiary again was just a little bit more clean. It is longer. I think by my records I have it's about 40 minutes longer than Honeybuzz, but to me, if I'm setting up a game, that's going to be worth it. So Apiary for me. David.
Yeah, for me, I got mostly the same times you all got when I played with the different groups that I played with. But value for my time, we talk a lot about, do you feel that time? Meaning, do you feel like it's moving fast? Is it moving slow? How do you feel, what does it actually feel like while you're there? Because sometimes 3 hours could feel like an hour. Sometimes games that are an hour can feel like 3 hours. My thing is, I think both these games play really fast. I have really good feelings for both of them. But I just get more meat on the bone. And maybe that's just where I'm at as a gamer today. I like a little bit more complex games. And I feel like Apiary hits this really good medium where it's not super heavy like I like some of the games, but it's not super light. It's somewhere in between, but I like kind of where it sits in my brain where I don't have to really stress it out in order to play a good game of this. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Apiary as well and give it value for my time.
All right, so Apiary takes value for your time 3-1, takes a 2-1 lead in the overall battle. We'll go to replayability and kick it right back to David.
Yeah, replayability for me right now, it's Apiary. I just want to jump back in. I feel like there's so much to explore with the different factions that I haven't seen yet, and just the different ways. I feel like I play this game different every time, just based off what's coming up, and I like that. I haven't explored like the dances, like Chris is saying. There's areas of the board where I have not fully explored yet, and I would like to. So for me right now, I am going with Apiary. I'm going to kick it over to Daniela.
Yeah, it's funny you hit on all the points I was going to hit on for the game Apiary as far as replayability, because I do believe there are different things on the board that I've not yet discovered. I know we were talking about how Dave had a handful of cards and he was using those in certain ways. I fully didn't discover those, as well as, I did one carving and then, just the different factions that David just talked about as well. Getting another card and being able to see kind of where that goes. So that's my vote. Pete.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you guys. It's pretty straightforward. Apiary. As much as I do like Honey Buzz, and I know there's some expansions, which I think would add a little bit, changes to the game. But replayability, there's just so much randomness in the game that every game's going to feel a little bit different. So Apiary for me. Chris.
Yeah, Honey Buzz seemed samey to me relatively quickly. Apiary, tons of factions, tons of tiles, tons of replayability, not even close for me. Apiary sweeps replayability, takes a commanding 3-1 lead, but we go on to the fun factor, and I'm going to start with Daniela.
Oh, this is tough because I love the way Honey Buzz looks on the table. I want to like it. I love the theme of these bees, and it's very classic when it's all set up. I love that deluxified version. I think there's a game there that I want to like. Pete, I'm probably gonna have to play this with you some more, and as well as maybe open up some of the expansions and stuff. So right now, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to, not unfortunately, I should say, like I just don't feel like I'm giving it a fair shake, but I'm gonna go with Apiary, just for the simple fact that I was enjoying it a little bit more. Again, none of these are knocking my socks off, but it's a little bit better discovery. Chris.
These are both good games. Apiary is more thinky, but I also feel like you have more control over what happens, and not having control over what happens to me is not fun. It's not a riot or a laughing time, but the fun factor goes to Apiary for me. I'll go to Pete.
All right. Well, it's funny that you say that because I have these both ranked at a 6 on my Board Game Geek account. I got to be in the right mood to play these, which I think is a factor. But for your point, I feel like my decisions in Honey Buzz are a little bit more meaningful, maybe because I have more control over what I'm doing. So it's a slighter, lighter game and straightforward mechanics. Again, I'm going to be able to get Honey Buzz. I can teach it easier than Apiary. I'm going to go fun factor, not by a whole lot. I'm going to go Honey Buzz. Let's go to David.
Ooh, I think this one isn't as hard. There wasn't like a standout memory moment like I like to judge fun factor on. But for me, the standout moments, I think, and the game I'm going to give it to is Apiary, just because I feel like the scoring at the end of the game is kind of a standout moment, because a lot of times you don't necessarily know how it's going to pan out because people have tucked seed cards and people have, carved tiles, and you might not have any. And you're like, can I actually hold people off? And I think during that game's progression, some people are earning points during the game. Some people are going back on the board during the game. And I feel like that reveal at the end is really fun. And every game I've played has been within 5 points of the winner in second place. I think there's something to be said about going on different paths. And every time I play this game, the first and second are always about 5 points or less apart. And I think that's a testament to what I consider fun, that every way almost has a chance to win. Maybe it's just one card goes this way or that. So for fun factor, I'm going with Apiary this round.
So Apiary takes fun factor, and that's going to do it with a score of 4-1. Apiary proves itself to be the queen bee and wins today's Battle of the Funnest.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of yet another episode of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our discussion. And if you'd like to get in touch, just email us at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com or reach out to us on social media. Thanks again for listening. And until next time, remember, hope is the only bee that makes honey without flowers. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Adios, amigos.
Chris?
Yeah, I did a better job of summarizing these two, I think. These
Than
are
what?
shorter than the last one that was like a book and a half.
Well, it's still shorter than your cheat code.
Yeah. No positives over there, Danielle.
No.
Chris is waiting for the dislikes.
I gave 2 positives.
Yeah, okay.
Did I put that one down?
You did.
What the
Super
hell?
gay.
What was I smoking there?
What did you? I wasn't listening. I zoned out.
I was like, what is that? That's so funny.